right, well, good morning. For those of you who don't know, my name is Robbie Kubr. I'm the senior pastor here at Gateway, and we're excited to continue on in our series on Mark that we've been going through really since the beginning of the year. But before we get there, I gotta know this. Well, I think I know this about you. Most of you are probably like me, and it is that as a kid, there were 4 words that I hated to hear from my parents, maybe more than any other words that they could say. And they said it a lot to me. It's these words: because I said so. Like, it's just those 4 words, because I said so, that I dreaded hearing those words. They usually came during a time where I had maybe asked why too many times, and they just kind of got fed up with it. They wanted to end the conversation just because I said so. And sometimes that was telling me I had to do something because they said so. Sometimes it was saying I couldn't do something I wanted to because they said so. Sometimes they, I don't know if it was just they were having a rough day or they were tired or what. Sometimes they let off with that. Like the very first question I asked, "No, because I said so." That was just how it started. But no matter the context, I hated hearing those words. Because those 4 words, because I said so, meant the death of my dream. It meant that whatever I was hoping for in that moment was not going to happen. It was done. It was over with. I also hated it because not only did that mean that whatever I wanted wasn't going to happen, but it also it created a relational dynamic that I didn't enjoy. It shut down communication between my parents and I, and it reminded me of my place. It reminded me that in that situation, in that moment, my wants, my opinions, they weren't the priority. That for whatever reason, sometimes they were good reasons, sometimes they weren't. For whatever reason, in that moment, my wants and opinions were not top priority. And nobody likes to be reminded of their lack of influence or their lack of authority in any situation in life. Nobody likes to feel that they don't matter or that they aren't seen by another person. As an adult, I realize how damaging those words can be in a parent-child relationship. It's like this authoritarian approach to relationships, and I know how hurtful it can be, and yet I use that phrase with my kids way more than I know is okay. And even worse, I live these words out in my relationships with other people in the way I interact with them. See, those words, whether they're actually verbalized or just lived out through our actions and the way we treat people, those words can be so damaging, not only in parenting, but really in every area of life. Think about it. Think about the most unpleasant relationships that you've had in your life. Many of those, that relationship became unpleasant because of this dynamic. And maybe the words were never said, but there was a clear lack of concern for your well-being that was communicated. And think about it. Your least favorite boss that you've ever had in life was likely your most authoritarian boss. They were likely the boss who was most likely to just say, "This is what you have to do, and don't ask questions, just get it done." And they didn't communicate care, that you understood why, and that they didn't communicate a care for you as a person. They just wanted the task done. You have people in your life maybe that you are no longer friends with, or at least maybe that friendship has grown a lot more distant than it used to be, because at some point you realize that they were not prioritizing your well-being. That in the relationship, they were the taker, that you were the giver, and they were the taker, and they just took everything that you had to offer without pouring back into the relationship. We've all experienced that, and it's the worst feeling. We hate that feeling. But what if I were to tell you that there are 4 other words, not because I said so, but there's 4 other words, that if we could remember these 4 words in every situation in life, that if we could consistently remind ourselves of these 4 words, it has the potential to completely revolutionize every single relationship in our life. It has the potential to make you a better parent, a better friend, a better coworker, a better boss, a better citizen, a better leader. These 4 words are so key for our relationships with other people. And not only would remembering these 4 words, not only would it make you better in all of those roles, but many of the people around you would actually notice it. And they would notice the change in you. And maybe not everybody's going to pick up on it, but many will. And I would even go as far as to say that if we can consistently remember these 4 words and put them into practice, that these 4 words could be the very thing that demonstrate the heart of God to the people around us more vividly than just about anything else that we can do in life. If we can just remember 4 words. And if these 4 words are as powerful as I'm trying to say that they are, it makes sense that they came from Jesus, right? Like, it makes sense that the Savior of the world was the one to speak these words. We've been going through the Gospel of Mark, and today we're in Mark chapter 10, and this is the passage where Jesus says these 4 words that we'll get to in a little bit. Mark chapter 10, it happens in the context of a conversation that he's having with his disciples. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. It's nearing the end of his life. He knows that it's getting down to the end of his life. He's actually already predicted his death and resurrection to the disciples 2 different times. He's told them, this is where we're going. This is what is going to happen. And so you can imagine, like, his followers, they've been following him for 3 years. They've been kind of hanging on every word that he said and following around, watching what he does, the way he interacts with people, the way he healed and helped people. And now he's talking about going to be like handed over to chief priests and all these terrible things that are going to happen. And you can imagine the shift in the disciples' minds that's going on. They're listening to this going, what is he talking about? There's no way that this is going to happen. And so there's all this crazy talk going on about, like, Jesus begins to talk about how hard it is for people to enter the kingdom of God and how much it's going to cost. In the passage right before what we're looking at today, Jesus talks about how like family relationships should be like deprioritized to the gospel, like the sharing the gospel is the most important thing. He starts to say things that are just really would have struck the disciples as being absolutely crazy. And so it's in the context of one of these conversations that Jesus shares these 4 words. And so we're going to begin in Mark chapter 10, beginning in verse 32. And this is what it says. It says, they were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to them. So Jesus, like he said, we're going to Jerusalem. I'm going to die there. He is leading the way to go there. Now, that is so strange. Like, if you know that that's what's coming, why would he be so excited to get there and, like, leading the disciples? It's crazy. So it makes sense that the disciples are watching this happen and they're astonished, and the other people traveling with them are afraid because they're like, he knows this is what's going to happen, and yet we're just, like, walking right into the lion's den. So it goes on, verse 33. Jesus said, so we are going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. And so Jesus runs down the list of what he's facing, like all these terrible things. And yet he continues heading to Jerusalem. This would have been so confusing for his followers. This would have been so confusing because they expected Jesus to, like, come in and take over everything and make everything great. And Jesus is telling them, no, here's all the things that I'm coming to. And they all, like, none of them sound great. None of them sound appealing. It's going to be an extremely difficult time. And it's in the context of this conversation that 2 of the disciples in particular, James and John, they come up to Jesus and they try to have, like, a little side conversation. And this is what happens in verse 35. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Like, did you not just hear what he said? Like, did you just ran down the list of all these terrible things that are coming, and they, like, sneak up to him like, hey, Jesus, like, I know, I heard you, like, all that stuff about, like, being spit on and flogged. I'm really sorry about that. That's going to be terrible. But can you do us a favor? And that word whatever, like, that's pretty audacious, right? Like, to ask anything in that moment is probably not all right. To ask, hey, Jesus, do anything we ask you to do, that's gutsy. Like, that takes some fortitude there. And so they're kind of out of their minds by asking them. And so this would have been the perfect time for Jesus, if he was ever going to say no because I said so. This is the moment. Like, this is the time where he could just like shut it down, because this request is so ridiculous. But Jesus doesn't do that. Verse 36. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. It goes on. They replied, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left hand in your glory. They're talking about, hey, Jesus, in your glory. So like after all the spitting and the flogging and the death and all that bad stuff, once that's done, when you're like back to being Jesus and like God and everything, can we sit at your right and left hand side? Can we have these positions of prominence? Not right now. We know what's coming. We know what you said. Not right now, but later on. Basically, they're asking, hey, after all the bad stuff, can you give us the best of the good stuff? Thanks for taking all that bad stuff, but can we have the goods when it's all over and done with? And Jesus responds to him, verse 38, you don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? He's basically saying, look, guys, you don't even know what you're asking. You still don't get it. He has worked with them for 3 years to reveal his mission to them, to tell them, like he has predicted very recently with them of all these terrible things that are going to happen, and they still don't get it. And so he's basically saying, look, guys, you have no idea what is coming, and you have no idea how rough it's going to be. He uses that picture of cup and baptism. Cup, that idea of cup would have been like a common metaphor for the wrath of God that was going to be poured out in judgment of human sin and rebellion. Not a good thing. And so Jesus is saying, like, here's what I'm facing. You think you can take that on? And then he uses this word baptism. And most time in church, when we hear the word baptism, we think of like water baptism, like that, what we do with people when they decide to follow Jesus. Like that's what we think of. But that's actually not what Jesus is talking about here. That word baptism literally means immersion. And in this moment, Jesus is describing that judgment that is to come, that is going to be placed on him. He's saying, look, it's going to be an all-encompassing kind of judgment that he's going to take on himself. It's going to be something that is going to cost him his very life. And he's basically saying to the disciples, like, guys, this is what's coming. You think you can handle this? And look at what they say in verse 39. This is crazy. We can, they answered. That's ridiculous. This is so audacious, so arrogant. He goes on. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. Jesus is basically saying, look, I know what's ahead for you guys. You don't. You have no idea. But James, I know that you're going to be the first of the apostles to be killed for their faith. And John, I know that you're going to die alone in exile on an island. Like, you're right. You are going to take this, but you just have no idea what that means yet. You have no clue what is coming. And so they're walking along, and this is the conversation that has gone on. And look what happens in verse 41. It says, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. When everybody else that's traveling with them hears about this conversation that they've had, they get upset with James and John. And they're not upset because they've disrespected Jesus. They're not mad because they've asked this ridiculous ask of Jesus. They're upset because they feel like they're getting left out. Like, this is you gave him 3 cookies, but we only get 1. Why? Like, that's the feeling, that's the reason that they're upset, is they're like, how is this fair? Like, they get to ask for this and we don't get this? It's absolutely crazy. And so it leads to an argument, and they start arguing over which one of them is going to be the greatest. And in this moment, Jesus had to be so frustrated because he has already covered with this with them a couple of times. But he doesn't just say, okay, guys, we're doing this because I said so. He begins to talk with them. He said, okay, basically he says, like, all right, one more time. Let's go over this one more time. Verse 42. Jesus called them together He said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Basically, he's saying, hey, you know how this works. You know how the Roman government and the Gentiles, you know how the secular world works. You know that it's all about leverage, that everything in life is about leverage, that the powerful are looking for ways that they can leverage their own power for their own benefit. Like those people with resources and influence, they leverage those resources and influence for the benefit of themselves. This is what humans do. That when we get a position of power or influence, we use it to improve our lives. It makes sense. And everybody knows that this is how the world works. And so the disciples are listening to this and they'd be going, yeah, we get it. Like, why do you think we want those positions of influence? We know that's how the world works, and we hope it still works that way when we're the ones that have the resources and the influence. And Jesus goes on in verse 43, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Jesus is saying, look, it's okay to want to be great, but if you want to be great, in order to be great in my kingdom, it's got to look radically different. And before that they can come at Jesus with their yeah buts, so like yeah but this or what about this, before they can do that, Jesus takes away all of their excuses in this next verse, verse 45. It says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. He uses that word for, and that doesn't mean like for as in a gift. For in this case means in the place of. That Jesus was to be a ransom in the place of many. And he uses that word ransom too, and that's a weird word for us. That's not a word we use very often. Really, we only typically use the word ransom in situations like a kidnapping, where somebody's been kidnapped and that kidnapper is demanding a ransom. They're demanding some payment in order for them to return whoever they've taken. But what that word literally means is it means to buy freedom by the freedom of a slave or a prisoner. It's the idea that someone who has considerable resources or influence is willing to match the value or the debt of the person that they're trying to set free. And so it has to be incredibly disproportionate to the person who needs the freedom. It's so disproportionate to what they can actually offer on their own. That whoever is offering this ransom has to have the influence and the resources available to go far beyond what that original person could offer for them on their own behalf. But to be able to offer what is necessary to set them free. And if you think about it, that's how all life-changing love is. All life-changing love is this deeply self-sacrificial love. It's a type of love that knows that it can't be given without taking a hit yourself. Like, I think of, maybe parenting is a great example, is that when you become a parent, you kind of suspend some of your hopes and dreams for about 20 years, right? Because during that time, you have to be focused on raising your kids, and you have to be focused on instructing them to become the people that God has created them to be, and you've got to teach them, and you've got to model for them, and sometimes that means you have to say no to some other things in your life. And so you take your power and your influence, and you use it for the betterment of your kids. And you do that selflessly because you love them, and that's exactly what I mean, is that all life-changing love is sacrificial. See, Jesus, what he's done here is he's set up a stark contrast between himself, the way he loves people, and the way most people exercise their power and their resources in the world. Most people leverage their power to get their way. Jesus is saying that influence is gained not only by taking power and taking control, but actually by giving it away. He's saying that influence gained by power and control, look, those aren't the things that change society. We need a different approach. Tim Keller has a great quote that I want to read to you with this idea. He says this, He says, as Christians, be so sacrificially loving that the people around you who don't believe what you believe will soon not be able to imagine this place without you. They'll trust you because they see that you're not only out for yourself, but you're out for them too. When they voluntarily begin to look up to you because of the attractiveness of your service and love, then you'll have real influence. It will be an influence given to you by others and not taken by you from others. And we read this passage, and it's really easy for us to want to make fun of or maybe come down on the disciples, because we've read the whole story and we've seen it, and we're sitting there reading it and listening to it going, how did they miss this? Like, how did they not understand this yet? But what we really need to be asking, and I think the reason Mark includes this story in his gospel, is to prompt the question within us, what am I missing right now? Like, they missed it. How am I maybe missing it? See, the key is in the 4 words that I alluded to at the beginning. Go back to verse 43. Jesus says this. He says, not so with you. Those are the 4 words. Not so with you. When Jesus is contrasting the way the world works and the way people leverage their power and their influence to benefit themselves, Jesus is saying, you're different. Not so with you. He's saying, what would it look like in your world? Think about your world right now. Your world, your home, in your workplace, in your community. What would it look like for you to become a not so with you type of leader? See, when you choose to follow Jesus, this is the direction he will lead you. He will lead you to a place, he will always lead you to a place where you will leverage your power and your resources for the benefit of those who have less power and fewer resources. This is what it means when we love as we have been loved. This is how we love God. This is how we love our neighbor as ourselves. This kind of influence, it also flows out naturally into 4 other words. 4 other words, like maybe not so with you, are the words that we need to remember internally when we're faced with those situations where we just don't want to say, now because I said so. We need to remember not so with you, but the words that maybe actually need to come out of our mouths is this question right here. How can I help? Or how can we help? See, in situations when we have power or influence, we are accustomed to people coming to us with that question. We're accustomed to people coming up to us and saying, hey, you're the leader, or you're the boss, you're in charge. How can I help? Or that's what we want people to do maybe, is to come up with us. I don't understand why people just won't get on board and help out. Like, why don't people pitch in? We want people to come to us with that question, but the reality is that we need to be going to them with that question. How can I help? Or maybe together as a group of people, as a church, how can we help? See, if I'm going to lead like Jesus, and if you are going to truly leverage your power and influence, and together as a church, if we are going to be the kind of people who truly display the heart of God to the world, then this question, how can I help? How can we help? That question needs to be front and center. It's the idea of how can I loan you my strength? How can I put my weight behind your need? See, when you leverage your power and resources for the benefit of those who have less power and fewer resources, you are demonstrating the heart of God to the world around you. And here's how I know that. Jesus said it. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. I got to tell you, I say this a lot, I feel like, but I'm so glad to be a part of a church that continually asks this question. That as we think about our influence in the community and our influence in the world around us, this church, maybe more than anyone I've ever been a part of, asks this question, always looking for ways that we can help, that we can jump in, that we can partner with different organizations to show God's love to the world, both here in Clarksville and in the surrounding world. And one of those organizations that we partner with to do that, and I'm so glad to be able to partner with an organization that is also continually asking this question, One of those organizations is World Compassion Network, and we've got actually a couple of representatives from World Compassion Network here today. I want to invite these guys up. So this is Tyler Snow and Josh Grill. They are from World Compassion Network, and yeah, go ahead. All right, and sorry, I'm going to.
Hello.
All right,
Hello.
welcome. Hey. Good to have you guys here. Real quickly, I just want to introduce these guys. So this is Tyler, this is Josh. Like I mentioned, they're here from World Compassion Network. And World Compassion Network is, again, one of the missions that we support. We supported World Compassion Network for a long time here as a church. And like I said, one of the things I appreciate about World Compassion Network is that they're continually asking this question as well, is how can we help, and just looking for needs. And so we have these guys here today, and we just wanted to invite you guys, and hey, just tell us a little bit more about World Compassion Network. Maybe just kind of a general way to kick off is just this, is how, what does World Compassion Network do? Like, give us what's the heartbeat of your organization?
Robbie, I'm sorry to move the script around. I just have to say something. Tyler and I were driving down here, and I was explaining to him what a cool little church this was. And I told him, yeah, it's probably been 5 or 6 years, and it's showing me my own age. Ron informed me that it's been 12 years since I've been down here. But in those 12 years, I can honestly say, as a church, and just a bit of encouragement to you, we have never had a church that has been more giving and asking this very question more than Gateway. Before Family to Family got interrupted on the food box program, we used to use you as an example to some of our congregations that were 2,000 strong and would have a hard time putting forward as many food boxes you guys did with us for the past. So I just want to say thank you for your compassion over the years. When I heard it was 12 years, just another reminder of how God shows his faithfulness through his people, which is you. So thank you. I had to throw that in.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Yeah, it has been definitely a long partnership, and I want to say back to you guys, like, it's been a blessing for us as a church to be able to partner with you guys, especially for so long, and to see all the different ways that God has worked through our partnership together, and the work that you guys do as an organization to show the love of Jesus, to answer this question, to say, hey, where can we help? Just looking for opportunities to get involved and to show people what Jesus is like. But for those of who maybe haven't been around, who maybe don't know all the history, just give us just a quick umbrella, 30,000 foot view of World Compassion Network. What do you guys do? What's kind of the heartbeat of WCN?
Yeah, so basically we kind of operate in 3 main different branches at WCN. One of them is missions in Honduras, which Josh heads up, and he'll talk more about that. The other one is disaster relief. I'm the disaster relief coordinator, so that's kind of my branch of the ministry. Another thing we do is just compassion projects around our local community. That's with local organizations and churches and stuff like that. So,
awesome. So I know pretty recently we've kind of been in contact with a couple different disasters that have happened around here. We talked with you guys a bit when the floods came through Waverly, and then again this past December when the tornadoes came through. Anything you could share about those 2 things in particular, since they're close to home with us, and we kind of kept an eye on things. What has been, I guess, World Compassion's response to those, and what kind of progress are you seeing in those areas?
yeah, so with disaster relief, we do a couple different things. One of them is the physical aspect of it. So a lot of it is just manual labor and cleanup. There's just a lot of debris that needs to be pulled out of houses. So for instance, in Waverly, with all the flooding that happened there, it was a lot of cutting drywall out, making sure those houses don't get mold infested into it, and just cleaning all that stuff out. Secondly, something else we do is set up distribution hubs. And usually when disasters go on, churches and organizations, they want to help and they're just not sure how. So they raise funds. Sometimes there's money being sent down. A lot of time we get a lot of food and water, supplies, and that comes in major abundance. And the issue there is everything gets sent down, but then it's kind of hands off. And so a lot of this stuff ends up sitting on the street and stuff like that. So what we do is set up these distribution hubs that we can collect the food and put that in one area, the water in another area, supplies in another area, and in an organized way pass that out to victims that need it. And so that's actually a big part of what I did in Waverly. And when I came back and talked to Robbie and Ron, and kind of gave them an idea of what was going on in Waverly. And I think at that point, you had sent a team down and were able to help out down there. And so thank you for doing that. It's a big part of what we do. So, and lastly, I would say that the biggest part of what we do is working through a local church. And you'll hear Josh talk about this. That's our main focus, is working through a local church that wants to open its doors to people, let people sleep on the pews, eat their food. That's what we really focus on, because our goal is, with disaster relief, there's so much visually that's going on. But the bigger part of it all is this isn't our eternal home. And while we are helping rebuild homes and provide relief to people, there's an emotional component to it that people just aren't aware of. And so to listen to people, pray with people, talk with people is a major part of what we do with disaster relief.
Awesome. That's awesome. One of the things that I love about World Compassion Network is as church leaders, we always have this this tension. I don't know if you want to call it a tension, but a balance we try to seek between, helping out in local missions, local outreach opportunities, needs in our community, but then also needs around the world, because we don't want to only be focused on what's going on here. We know that the church is all over the world. We want the church to be all over the world. So that's one of the things I love about WCN is you guys do work domestically, but you also do work internationally. Now, Josh, I know you're kind of the expert on the international part of what you guys do. So could you give us a little bit of a picture of that side of World Compassion Network?
Yeah, I don't know about expert, but yeah, I'm the guy in charge down in Honduras. Tyler hit the nail on the head. We try to make it very clear with everyone. We do some humanitarian work, but we are not a humanitarian organization. That is not the end goal for us. So giving someone who's thirsty a glass of water, that's a beautiful thing. But giving them a glass of water in Jesus' name, that's an eternal thing. So for us, that's always the goal. So we have a lot going on with WCN. We have a lot going on in missions. And whether it's the food boxes that we used to do, or whether it's the building projects that we're focusing on right now, Robbie, most of you know Honduras got hit with 2 Category 4 tornadoes within about a month. So we have thousands and thousands of people who are already poor, right, who are now totally displaced. So the goal for us, whether it's bricks or whether it's food boxes, is ultimately to connect them with the local church. That's why we could care less when we're in disaster relief or down in the mission field if they know who WCN is. We want them to know who their local pastor is, and when we're coming down and serving and helping, we want them to know all of that's coming through that local church. So we're down there to equip and encourage those pastors down there to reach out to their communities, and we do that through simple gifts, whether it's food or whether it's a house. But those gifts, I can never emphasize enough for you, because when you would do this for us in the past and fill up a box or buy a block, it's so important for me for you to understand the value of that thing, right? It's not just the value of one piece of a house or one meal. It's what opens their heart to the gospel that we bring. And then ultimately that gets us to our final goal, which is salvation for those families. So we're thrilled to be reconnected with Clarksville. As I said, you've always just been a beacon of encouragement and generosity. So for the possible opportunity to work on this house, the lady we're building it for, she's not just another number in so many. This is Dilcia, who we've met her family, a single mom who's struggling incredibly, but loves the Lord mightily. So your help on this, I just can't express enough what that means. But for many of you, and I can't help but mention this either, 15 years ago, I was sitting where you are listening to a conversation similar to this, and God did something in my heart. Something was resonated. I didn't want to go to Honduras. I wasn't interested in missions. Well, I went that year, and he changed my life, and within a year, I had resigned as a school psychologist and now I'm doing this. So there's transformation through actively serving and when we take those steps of faith. So I'd like to invite each of you too, if a missions trip is something that's on your heart or mind, please come over and talk to me after the service. I'd love to be the one to encourage you to take that next step.
All right, awesome. So you guys are doing some incredible work, and so you guys have both kind of alluded to a project that we've been a part of in the past, and Steve and both of you guys also kind of hinted toward a project that we've got coming up with some bricks, but some of you may not have any idea what they're talking about. And so we'll give you a little bit of history, and then we'll let you know kind of what the opportunity in front of us is right now. So for a long time, World Compassion Network had a project called Family to Family, where essentially we would collect, as a church, we would collect boxes filled with food, right? And we would send those to you guys. You would send them down to Honduras and use those to distribute to families there for evangelistic opportunities. And it was kind of a foot in the door to be able to talk with people. And that was something that for years we really got behind as a church, that we loved it. And if you've been around, you remember those times where we would collect the boxes and we'd pile them up here in the front. And our church, sometimes we'd collect like 200 plus boxes.
A lot.
It was a big thing for us. It was a great way for us to be involved in the ministry that you guys are all doing down in Honduras. But over the years, like with costs and just government fees and all the different things that happen, it became kind of cost prohibitive to actually ship the stuff down there. And so you had to shift the program a little bit so that we don't collect food anymore and send it down, that we kind of the purchasing happens down in Honduras and the distribution and all of that, which is great. That's a better way to do it anyways. But for us as a church, it kind of took away an opportunity for us to be involved. That was something that we had loved. And so as we've learned more about what you guys are continuing to do with the work in Honduras and the need for homes because of all the people that have been displaced because of the tornadoes, we saw a pretty cool opportunity. Because we began to ask, and we said, okay, what's it, you're looking to build houses for people that need homes. What's it cost for a house? And I think, if I remember right, the cost was right about $6,000 for a house, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we go, okay, I'm just curious. You build these out of cement blocks, bricks. How many bricks does it take? And I think the answer we got back was about 200. Mm-hmm. So we went, okay, what's 6,000 divided by 200 blocks? That's $30 a block. We can do that. Like as a church, we think about the role that we used to have with the boxes. We can simply replace what we did with the boxes with the bricks and be a part of the ministry that is going on in Honduras, the outreach to these families, especially the woman that you mentioned. And so here's what we're going to do is that throughout the month of March, we are going to be collecting funds. And really what we're doing is we're asking you as a congregation to pray about this and to buy some bricks. For roughly about a donation of $30 will cover one brick. If we can get 30, or if we can get 200 $30 donations, or if you want to give more than $30, you can buy 5 bricks or 10 bricks or 100 bricks, I don't know. But just pray about that and see, hey, God, what would you have us do in this time? And we've set a goal. We're going to raise $6,000. We want to raise enough money to build an entire house for someone that needs it. And so as we do this, you'll see over on the wall, maybe you've seen it already, just to the right of the stage, you've seen the kind of blue roof that's over there. If you can see, you may not be able to see this from your seats. Down on the bottom, there's already some brick stickers that have gone up there. Basically, as we raise money, we're going to keep track of what's coming in and the amount of bricks that are being sold, and we're going to put stickers on the wall that show what our progress is like on the building of this house, on reaching our goal of $6,000. And so you'll be able to track week after week how we're doing. And like I said, our goal is $6,000, 200 bricks that will provide a house. But you guys had also let me know that not only will that $6,000 go to building a house, but it'll also do something else.
Yeah, so part of it, again, a brick sounds simple, but there's so much that this equals when we go down to Honduras. We have started a concrete business down there, a concrete block business for the local church. The pastor actually runs it. We're constantly trying to figure out ways, how can we help them be more sustainable? So when you purchase that, it not only helps Dilcia with the house that we're working on, it also helps the workers that we're paying to build bricks down there. And I had let Robbie know a small percentage of whatever the church gives as a total will continue to go to a food program that's almost identical to our family-to-family program. We simply source down into Honduras. At some point with the old family-to-family program, as people who wanted to be accountable with the funds you were giving, we had to make a decision. How much are we going to allow the Honduran government to shake us down in the ports? At some point that doesn't make sense. So a portion of what you're giving will go to buy beans and rice. That'll help our ever-expanding church plants reach out to those new communities, give them a little bit of love to try to invite them into the relationship, and hopefully get them involved with the church. So it's not simply a block. It's helping with us with evangelism. It's helping us with jobs, and it's helping us with a family who desperately needs a place to stay.
Yep. So if you're wondering about how to get involved with this, how do we give to this? There's a couple different ways. One is if you're here today and you want to give in person specifically to family, there on the table over here next to the World Compassion display, there is an offering plate there. Everything that comes in over there is going to go towards this project. It's going to go towards the family-to-family project. If you have regular offering to give, that'll still be in the normal place in the back. But if you're watching online, or maybe like you typically give digitally or however that goes, you can also give on our website. So when you go to our website to give, gccclarksville.com/give, when you give there's a drop-down menu that you can give to the general fund or the building fund, and there's an option on there that says family to family. If you select that, that will ensure that whatever donation you're giving goes toward this program. So like I said, a couple ways to give, a couple ways to get involved. Take some time, pray about this, pray over the month of March. How would God have you be involved? Is it 1 brick? Is it 10 bricks? Is it no bricks? But you're going to continue to pray for the project. No matter what level of involvement you have, God is going to use it to do some incredible things. And we just feel like as a church, He's given us the ability to provide a home for somebody. And so we want to do that. So we're excited about that. We're excited to partner with you guys again and to continue the partnership that we've had for so long. Guys, I really appreciate you being here, taking the time to come down with us. I'd encourage you, before you leave today, after the service, Josh and Tyler are going to be over there by their display. Stop by, see them, ask them questions, talk to them about World Compassion Network and the work that they do. And I'm sure they have all kinds of cool stories of ways God has worked, not just through the things that they do, but through our partnership with them as well. And so I encourage you to stop by, get to know them a little bit. But before we dismiss, I want to pray with you, and then we'll sing one more song, and we'll be out of here. So let's pray together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for Josh and for Tyler and their heart for you, God, that they have a heart that asks that question, how can I help? How can we help? And so I thank you that you have led them to an organization like World Compassion Network. And we thank you for WCN and the work that they do both domestically and around the world to show people your love. And God, we talk a lot about the humanitarian things that we do. But God, we do that as a front door to evangelism. And God, that is the goal, is that through World Compassion Network and everything that we do here as a church at Gateway, we want people to come to know you. We want people to be in relationship with you, to love you. And so that's what we ask. We ask that you would continue to encourage Tyler and Josh and the teams that they work with in the work that they do. And God, would you continue to work through World Compassion Network to show people what your love is like, to introduce people to Jesus so that we can see your kingdom grow. God, we love you. We thank you for the chance we have to be a part of what you're doing in the world. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.